Ready, Chair.
Okay, we'll call the July 1st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll do roll call. Jacobs here, Lanterman,
Here.
Schulach,
Here.
Vanderkamp,
Here.
and Wu. Okay, for those that would like, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, great. Well, I welcome you all. This is our first time back since we went to the Zoom meeting, and I think we're all pretty excited. We have a new commissioner that we haven't met before, as well as a new planner, and it's good to see all you people back, and we look forward to our interaction with you tonight. All right, let's go to the approval of the agenda. I have, just for notification, so item 6, new business, it says public comment opportunity. We will not take public comment before each of the public hearings. We have 4 public hearings. For those that would like to speak about an issue that is not on our agenda under new business, our next item is open forum, and you're more than welcome to address the commission at that time. Is there any other questions or updates for our agenda? All right, if there are none, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda is approved. Okay, item 4 is open forum. If there is anybody here that would like to address the commission on an issue that, again, is not on tonight's agenda, you're free to do so now by stepping up to the podium, giving us your name and address. Anybody? Okay.
Mr. Chair, I should also add,
online.
yeah, we have an online component, so members of the public who are joining us via Zoom, please raise your hand by either pressing *9 or through your reactions button on the bottom of your screen, so that you can participate in the open forum if you'd like.
Dean, you're one up here.
Okay. It looks like we do.
Did you want to speak? Okay.
On opening. Yep.
As long as it's about an item that's not on the agenda already. If you could please state your name and your address, and then, yeah, until we get a microphone.
Is it on?
I wouldn't know.
It should be on.
Hello?
There you go. Yep, it's on.
Hi. My name's Ron Ruling. I'm from 8065 County Road 116, which is across the street. And it has it's a 5-acre with a bordering line of the M&I development. Yesterday came home and found out that 60 feet of my private fence of trees is now bare. I no longer have privacy. I'm in the pond across the street at a beautiful pond. And last year I spoke with the engineer. We walked areas about the plan. I didn't realize there was a meeting last November that this all got approved. I thought that was a protected wetland. Where the water from that pond connects to the west. So I don't know what my repercussions are. They did not remove trees on my property, but if you look at the plot, which I could pass around if you care to, would that be proper?
Yeah.
Anyway, I've lost about 60 feet of the private tree surrounded my property only because my pond went 5 feet into this M&I property. Now I have to figure out, did they properly protect the wetlands, which was the last understanding I had. And what I can do next, because do I move the pond and put some trees back there? Because I don't have privacy. I have like 60 feet of open area now where it was, the reason I bought the property 20 years ago was because it was trees surrounded.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have anything to comment on that? I mean, the first question I would have is, were the trees on his property or are they M&I?
It sounded like they were on M&I's property, but what I would encourage is to have you reach out to Kevin Matson, our city public works director. I suspect you may have met with him or someone from his team last year. Yeah. Yeah. So if you met with him, and then, so I'd encourage him to reach out to the city, take a look, and if we need to schedule a call. But there was tree removal up in that north portion. There's a utility line going in, and I think that's probably in that general location. Trying to think about your property exactly, but he can meet with Kevin if you give Kevin a call, and if you need it, Natalie can send that contact info to you in the morning. Yeah. Yeah, you're this one, right? Yeah. Yep. So I'm familiar with it. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we'll get you in contact with Kevin Matson.
Sure.
When speaking to Kevin last year, they walked the northern property line, which extends from M&I to the City Hall, top of the hill intersection here, as a possible maintenance road on my property, on the north edge. Whether or not that was going to be a temporary access for septic maintenance, temporary lift pump. That's the last I had heard. No one's talked to me about that since, if they plan to take a part of my northern property to put a road across, or a temporary road. I'm surprised I haven't heard anything, if that's still a plan.
Probably another question to, yeah. Yep. Okay, thank you. You betcha. Natalie, do we have anybody else?
I don't have
Online?
any other cards for public forum, and I don't see anyone raising their hands online.
Okay. So, Jim, you were online, you saw the city council meeting last week, and it gets hard to hear with this new audio system. There were parts of the conversation I couldn't hear, especially if they laid back in their chairs. So as we address this for the benefit of our online viewers, we'll try to keep it close to the microphone. So, okay, item 5, minutes from June 3rd, 2021. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or alterations, corrections to the minutes? I didn't have any either. Okay. All right. If there are none, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from June 3rd.
I'll make that motion, Shulak.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. The minutes from June 3rd are approved. Okay, moving on to new business. Our first item up today is public hearing for rezoning preliminary plat and planned unit development for Von Blaricom and Schober properties, Amberley and Bellwether. And I'm sure we have a nice staff report.
Well, you have the staff report in your packet, but I'll run through a couple of the highlights. The property is west of the existing Bellwether development. It's guided low-density residential. And currently, the Schober property is zoned planned unit development. That was done as part of a previous phase of Bellwether, planning for future development. And the Van Blaricom property is currently zoned RSF2, single-family residential. The project includes a total of 192 new homes on 77 acres. 116 of those homes would be added to the Bellwether development, and 76 lots would be Amberley, which is a separate single-family neighborhood. The concept plan was reviewed by the council on January 28th, and the council generally supported the concept in principle, of course pending final details. Parks and Trails reviewed the plan at their May 20th meeting and recommended approval with some changes which were noted in your staff report. And then at the June meeting, we did table this item to give the applicant additional time to work through some infrastructure issues. This was part of a discussion at last week's council meeting as well, so we are now moving forward with the public hearing on the project. So you can see the Schober property is the outlined blue on the kind of the right side of the screen, and then Van Blaricom is outlined in blue on the left. So they're separated by a chunk of Bellwether, but they're being processed as a single application this evening. The proposal, like I said, is to rezone the property to PUD. The Van Blaricom property, the Schober property is already zoned PUD. And in the staff report, I went through the findings required to rezone to PUD. Staff finds that the PUD standards have generally been met to allow the single-family development, and I'll talk more about some of the specifics when we review the PUD development itself. If the rezoning to PUD is approved, the rezoning would be approved tonight, but wouldn't become effective until the final PUD development plan is approved. That's the way our ordinance is written. So this is from their concept plan, and I like it because the green areas are the portions of this project that are being proposed as Bellwether lots, meaning part of the Bellwether Homeowners Association. And in the northwest corner, the light yellow lots are the single-family home lots that are not part of Bellwether. They're proposed as part of Amberley. And again, this is from the concept, so you note the streets don't exactly align like they do in your final plan. But it's helpful to see the context of this project near Stieg Road and within the context of Bellwether. The eastern 116 homes will be part of Bellwether, which is for active seniors, 55 plus. They will have access to the amenity center that was built as part of Bellwether, and the lot standards proposed for this phase are the same as those proposed in Bellwether. The western 76 homes in the Amberley subdivision will be single-family homes. They will not have access to the Bellwether Amenity Center. They're not part of that HOA. There's no street connection to Bellwether to better separate the two neighborhoods, but there are sidewalk and trail connections between the neighborhoods because there's a huge park that is surrounded by Bellwether. The Amberley development is currently zoned RSF2. The PUD that they're requesting would be to allow it to develop with RSF3 standards. That's a different single-family zoning district. And it is consistent with those standards with one exception. Our code says 15 feet between buildings, a 5-foot setback on the garage side and a 10-foot setback on the living side. They're just proposing to simplify that to the 7.5-foot setback, still 15 feet between buildings. The flexibility requested beyond that change to how we measure the 15-foot setback. For the Bellwether lots, they're asking for the same garage flexibility that we granted them in Bellwether for the 44-foot and 60-foot wide lots. On those lots, the homes would exceed that 55% garage face. The 50-foot lots in Bellwether, oddly, and the lots in Amberley, though, do comply with our design guidelines limiting garages to that 55%. They are also requesting some flexibility from our standard that requires equal architectural treatment on elevations facing streets or parks, specifically requesting flexibility along Stieg Road. The council did grant flexibility for the existing Bellwether portion, provided there was some additional landscaping and an increased setback of additional 5 feet. And that is what's proposed for the Bellwether and Amberley portions here. So in this image, I need to get a pointer, I'm not used to the new system, my mouse doesn't point, but the red dots are the lots along Stieg Road where they would like some flexibility on the architectural standards. Our standards say, any elevation that faces any street or any park is required to meet the design criteria of a front yard, which is 3 materials, some percentage requirements. In Bellwether, we did allow some reduction in that architecture because of the amount of landscaping along Stieg Road. The council felt that it would not be as visible along those rear elevations. So the red dots are the ones where they're requesting flexibility. The green dots are the ones where they're generally abutting the park, and they are complying with the multiple frontage requirements. So about half of the lots would be requesting, half of the lots that have double frontage would be requesting some flexibility. As I mentioned, there are a lot of home elevations available, and so copies of these are available at City Hall, but I just clipped some of the different images. These are some of the examples of homes that would be available in the single-family Amberley development. We do not have details on the side elevations or percentages of the architecture. Generally, they seem to comply. The one in the upper left will need to have 2 different colors of lap siding in order to comply with our 3 material requirement. The one in the bottom left has lap siding and board and batten and some stone, so they may comply. We have to check the percentages. The upper right would comply. Again, the lower, or the middle one on the right, again, we'll have to work with them for those 2 lower ones on the right to make sure the variety that's required by the code are met. But generally, I think that it's doable. These are examples of the homes that would be built in the Bellwether component, similar product. It's the same product that's in Bellwether today. And so we have worked with them in Bellwether to establish the standards for what is required in that. And so while these look very plain on this image, we do have standards to ensure that they do comply with our architectural elevation requirements. Utilities to serve this site, we do have municipal sanitary sewer that will extend from the existing Bellwether neighborhood to serve this phase. And as the Planning Commission is aware, we purchase water from Maple Grove. We are in the process of doing some water planning for Northeast Corcoran. We've purchase agreement for the Lothar property for a new well site, but in the interim, this site will be required to connect to the city of Maple Grove, and we do have an agreement from Maple Grove to provide water to serve this development. When our city of Corcoran water becomes available, then they would be required to connect to our water system. And depending on council work, that might tie in early enough that they'd be able to connect without first connecting to Maple Grove. But if they need to do that, that's available. We do have an agreement for the Lothar property as a well site, but as part of this project, Pulte would also provide land for a water tower in the park and land for a potential well in the park. Those are both search areas. We haven't determined exactly whether that's the best spot to put them, but we are working with them to provide that land should it be needed. Transportation improvements were identified in the feasibility study along Stieg Road and County Road 116, and the applicant's plan do show all of those off-road improvements. Within the project, we've got standard 50 and 60-foot wide right-of-way, but the plans today do show what the feasibility requires, which is where the pavement stops today. At the edge of this property, it will be extended out to 116 in the same design manner, that 3-lane road. And then the county would require turn lanes on County Road 116. Stormwater will be managed on site. We know stormwater is always a challenge. All stormwater management must comply with city, watershed, and state stormwater management rules. And so we still are at the preliminary stage and are working through that, but we will continue to review that with them. In addition to managing the stormwater on site, as we've done with other significant projects of this size, the engineer is requesting a $100,000 contribution for future off-site water improvements. The wetland delineation was completed, and so that is reflected in the plans. We did note a couple of areas where the trail is inside the buffer, and that needs to be shifted, so there's a couple areas where there may be a trail easement needed in the backyards of a couple of the homes in the Amberley portion of the development. And then we'll make sure that all the wetland buffer monument signs are appropriately located. There is a little bit of wetland on this property, and as we've done for our other projects with floodplain, it will require a letter of map revision. That's a FEMA process. Once development is complete, we would do a letter of map revision, and that's coordinated through our city engineer. Parks and Trails, as I mentioned, there is a park dedication component to complete another portion of the city park. If you recall, there's a large open space park that was partially deeded with phase 1 of Bellwether, and then a portion of park that was dedicated with Bellwether 5th, and now we'll be getting another chunk adjacent to that parkland. And you can see on the left, that was the original concept for the land dedication, and so the dedication shown with this plan is consistent with what we originally asked for. There is a little bit of parkland proposed down on that far southwest corner of the site that's separated from the rest of the park. The Parks Commission does not want that land. We won't take that and give credit for that. But generally consistent. You can see in here the water tower and the well site. So Parks Commission does want to make sure that the trail will connect both developments up to Stieg Road, so it will connect between the Bellwether portion and the Amberley portion and connect to the trail along Stieg Road. And the trail alignment is one of the alignments being considered for the Three Rivers Diamond Lake Regional Trail in their search area. They haven't determined that exactly yet, but this could serve as part of that regional trail corridor. And they've reviewed and commented on this, that they are still looking to determine that final alignment, but this would be consistent with their plan. The way our ordinance is written, the developer must build the trails. They do so at their own cost for the base of the trails, and then we do reimburse them for the cost of paving only. There is a segment of sidewalk that isn't connecting from the northern portion of Bellwether, and that needs to make a connection down to the park. So those are a couple of the things Parks looked at. They also said the applicant needs to ensure that there's enough room for a parking lot. So we're looking for about a 15 to 20 stall parking lot here. This is a neighborhood park, this portion that's being dedicated now, but it does connect to that community park to the south, that larger open space park. So while certainly people in the neighborhood will use the park, this is open to the whole community, so we want to make sure there's a parking lot that's available for folks to use the parkland. The well site, which is shown kind of by that wetland, engineering would like that shifted nearer to the street so it's easier for maintenance purposes. And then I just want to note, because we get calls about this a lot, the city will design the park. What they've got on this plan is something to see if it's big enough, but we have not committed to a dog park here, and in fact the Parks Commission so far has not been excited about that idea. But there's a lot of conversation about what this park will be. When we're ready to develop it, the city's policy is usually for the Parks Commission to work with the neighborhood to decide what's appropriate in the park. So again, the city will design that at a future date. But with the comments from the Parks Commission, dedication would be a combination of land and cash. And so as they work through some of these shifts in the facilities in here, the parking lot, the well, the water tower, the parkland might grow a little bit to accommodate everything that's needed. So the preliminary plat is just creating the parcels, and that's 192 lots and 5 outlots. It's dedication of approximately 7 acres of parkland, which includes land for the well and the water tower. The image here is the land that's to be dedicated, or at least most of it is the land that's dedicated as Amberley. And then these two slides show basically the two chunks that get dedicated as part of Bellwether. Staff finds that the proposed development is consistent with the anticipated low-density residential land use. In fact, right now, they're on the low end, they're not quite at 3 units an acre. PUD flexibility is requested for the bellwether lots in a manner consistent with the previous bellwether approvals. The PUD flexibility for Amberley is really that architectural flexibility adjacent to Stieg, consistent with bellwether, and then that 7.5-foot setback to create a 15-foot separation rather than 10 and 5. In exchange, the developer will provide significant off-site improvements, land for a city well site, land for a city water tower, beyond the park dedication that's required. So that's a summary of a significant staff report, Mr. Chair. Our recommendation is that you open the public hearing and take comments. I would note there were 2 emails that were received before the packet went out, so they were included in the packet. After the packet went out, you received a revised email from the Whiteheads and a new email from Zappa's, and those were emailed to you. So those 4 items are entered into the record as if they were read this evening. So for those speakers, you don't need to read your letter. You can summarize it if you wish to speak to that. The commission did receive them and are entered into the record as anything else that's spoken tonight. And staff does recommend approval of the 4 items, rezoning to PUD, the findings of fact, the preliminary PUD development plan, and the preliminary plat. And Mr. Chair, before we open the public hearing, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Kendra, can you go back to that park slide, a few slides back? And I can't decipher exactly where this well site is.
The well site,
Tower. I mean,
yep, right here, this circle and this little square. It is a little bit faded on this image. So the circle's the tower? The circle on there is the well, and I don't have a pointer. So you can see the circle just north of the wetland, south of
Yep.
that trail.
Yep.
That circle is the well, and then just to the right, there's a little box.
okay,
That's the water tower.
okay. So,
And it's not a physical structure. The well isn't that big, but that's the well site generally.
and is this, so my understanding wasn't there a well that's gonna go right off of 116?
Right.
So is this another well in addition to that well?
Right,
Okay.
right.
And this tower would be used for both wells?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of search sites. This is one. There's another on the Oswald property down on 30.
Yep,
And so we just want to take this. We're not committed to this being there for sure yet.
okay,
But we want to take the land because we have the opportunity and protect that land. And if we don't need it for the water tower site and choose to put it on the Oswald farm site, this could just be parkland.
okay. And so the well has already been proofed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a search
It's an
site.
acceptable site for
Yes,
a well?
engineering has identified that as a site.
Okay. Right, that was all I needed to clarify. Any other comments or questions before we open up the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Kendra, just did the city council and mayor put in the moratorium for no more development until we work out the water and the sewer and those kind of things? And this is one of those properties that still fit into buying water and waste disposal through Maple Grove right now. I mean, if we don't have city water, city sewer, these properties are still okay to continue or to start up and go.
Yes.
They aren't any new development, correct?
Right, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. We actually have 2 items on our agenda tonight that are in Northeast Corcoran. This is
Okay.
one of them. And we did, in your packet, I think there's a note about it, maybe, I think in the council summary, the council adopted a moratorium for Northeast Corcoran while we work through our water supply issues, and we've applied for a grant to update our Northeast District design guidelines. So we have a moratorium in place that could be up to a year. And this property was already an application that was submitted, so we have to continue to process it, so that's exempted. And then the Gordon's Country Estate item that's later in
Okay.
it was also in there. And so they're exempted from work in the moratorium. But any other property in Northeast Corcoran needs to wait for a development proposal until the moratorium is over and we've completed our studies.
Until we've solved the water and
Right.
disposal issues.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, let's move to open up our public hearing. For those that would like to speak, again, raise your hand, take the podium, state your name and your address for the record.
Mr. Chair, would you like the applicant to do his presentation first before the public hearing
Oh,
or
I-
after?
I suppose we could take it now?
Okay.
Is the applicant here?
Good evening. My name is Paul Hoyer, Pulte Homes, 7500 Flying Cloud Drive, Suite 670, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, 55344. It's good to be here this evening. It's been 3 years since I've been before you. I see a couple of faces that are recognizable and a few new ones. I've got a short presentation. It's aimed at not covering the same ground that Kendra covered, and my goal was to answer different questions that may be in your minds. With me this evening, I've got Dean Lauder from our office. We have the primary property owner, Larry Van Blaricom, Jeff DeCesar, the broker for the property, and hopefully on our Zoom call is our engineer, Eric Johnson. So if there's any questions, we have a team here that can answer those questions. Go ahead. Go ahead again. So let's start with the background here again. Kendra covered most of this. The key point here is we always planned to develop these two properties in conjunction with Bellwether. They were basically two holes that were missing from the original application, and the goal here with this application is to fill those two holes. A lot of work went into creating Bellwether. It was the first development in Northeast Corcoran, so it involved quite a bit, and we had a nice public-private partnership to extend the trunk sewer to this area. It also included kind of the beginnings of creating your park district in this area. So we started dedicating some open space with woods and also some parks, and also the trail system associated with that. And we started reconstructing portions of Stieg Road. So the original 2018 Bellwether approval involved reconstructing 45% of Stieg Road and actually realigning it and adding turn lanes on 101. So a lot went into Bellwether to really get us to this point that we're at today. And it also helped fund the future city water system. Next. Let's keep going. Kendra had that one. So a little bit about the background. The application before you covers both a single-family neighborhood and the Bellwether extension. I think you're pretty familiar with single-family neighborhoods, so I'm focusing the rest of my presentation on what really is a Del Webb neighborhood, what does it involve, and why is it different? Go ahead. It started in 1960. Sun City in Arizona was the first age-restricted neighborhood in the country, and it was a Del Webb neighborhood. I still can't get past this. They had over 100,000 people touring the community over a 3-day period. It was that popular when it opened, and it continued on. There are over 100 neighborhoods across the country that are considered Del Webb. Many of them have the Sun City name, or Anthem might be another name that you're familiar with, and they go by many other names as well. So Pulte Group purchased Del Webb in 2001. It was a very iconic, popular brand, and we were very intent on keeping the same design standards so that that brand would not be diluted. In fact, we've been trying to find the right property in the Twin Cities for, 20, 30 years. And this was the first one in the Twin Cities that we felt passed all the tests to be a Del Webb neighborhood. So what makes a Del Webb neighborhood different? And here's a list of things that really separate what it consists of. It is age restricted, and the location is also something that is really closely looked at. It has to be within a certain minute drive of hospitals, the airport, and a variety of other amenities. So there's a lot that goes into the location of a Del Webb neighborhood. The size, too, since there are a lot of amenities, the size has to be large enough to be able to support that kind of cost. The design of the neighborhood is also a critical factor. There's a number of really key, beautiful design standards that lead it to look the way it is. And overall, we're really shooting for a resort-like feeling with a lot of beauty. At the bottom of the page here, a facilitated lifestyle, which we'll get into, is really a key component also of a Del Webb neighborhood. And of course, the homes, which are really aimed at the 55 and older crowd. A little bit about the age-restricted portion. What that means is one of the buyers of a home has to be 55 or older. The other one can be younger. There's also some restrictions on how long children can live in the neighborhood. The goal is to welcome the children, but on a visiting type basis. Go ahead. As I mentioned, the size of the neighborhood is really a big thing. In other markets across the country, it's not uncommon to have Del Webb communities consist of thousands or tens of thousands of homes. In the Twin Cities, we do have a growth boundary, which is a little bit unusual. There's not that many markets across the country that have a growth boundary. So that makes it difficult to find enough land to actually create a Del Webb neighborhood. The minimum Del Webb size is about 300 homes. And if this application before you is approved by the City Council, that would mean Bellwether will be 514 homes. The arrival drive is really a key iconic component of how we design a Del Webb neighborhood. What it really means is there's a parkway with no driveways on it, a lot of landscaping, some open space with view corridors, really creating that feeling of some luxury and beauty. And it always leads directly to the community center. It goes by different names, the clubhouse, whatever. Go ahead. This is a graphic showing the amenities that we created for Bellwether. It's a 12,000 square foot building. Go ahead. And let's get into the facilitated active lifestyle. What really separates Del Webb from a home somewhere or even a neighborhood that we create is it's creating a lifestyle. And what that means is there's actually a facilitated lifestyle director, and that person's job is to keep everybody busy. They organize everything from events, clubs, different activities, tours, bands at the clubhouse every Friday night, just a variety of things to keep people busy, keep people active. This is really called an active adult neighborhood. No need to spend a lot of time on this, but we've got 3 slides that show the different sizes homes. Sometimes we have widows or single people, so we have smaller homes. Quite a variety of options available for these folks. And the prices are from the mid 300s to, I say 600s in that last one, but I'm seeing before I came here tonight, there's many people that are buying options to get into 700,000s too. So quite a big range of values of these homes that people are purchasing. And a big part of what people enjoy about living in a Del Webb neighborhood is the homeowners association. It not only takes care of the facilitator and the amenities, but also the snow and mow, as we call it, removing snow right up to your front door, taking care of the lawns, and that's very attractive to a lot of folks who reach 55. Go ahead. And here's a list of reasons we hear from our buyers that make Del Webb so popular. The beauty, the resort-like atmosphere is definitely part of it. The amenities, which are always top-notch and beyond what you typically see in a neighborhood. And some people like to be surrounded by people of similar age. There's a lot of social activities. Some people, when they reach this part of their life, they're looking for more activities. Some to stay healthy and some social. There's also a sense of security in being in a neighborhood like this for a variety of reasons. Some is because you're around a number of people your age. Some of it is because there's people living there all the time because a fair number of the folks are retired, so it feels more secure. And some of it is some of the design attributes that we create in making the neighborhood feel safe with having some defensible space, especially around some of the perimeter of the sites. And of course, people enjoy the homeowners association maintenance and the facilitated active lifestyle. Go ahead. Community benefits. We oftentimes get calls from cities asking if we could build a Del Webb neighborhood in their home, and the reasons a lot of their people are looking for housing like this, and there really is a shortage around the Twin Cities and in fact across the country for 55 plus homes and neighborhoods. It's also a chance for cities to retain their current residents. Oftentimes they have to leave the city that they want to stay in with their church and their friends to find the kind of home that they're looking for. Also, these folks have saved money all their life. They have some disposable income, so they're really good for the local businesses. There's a dramatically reduced peak traffic flows because a percentage of these folks are retired, so you have a lot less traffic, especially during the peak morning and peak evening rush hours. And these are the people who are volunteering more than the younger folks, so that too makes it very desirable. And just quickly, a little bit about Bellwether. We started development activities in 2018. We started selling homes in 2019. We had an interest list of 2,600 people when we started selling homes. And this expansion was planned for to the extent that even when we looked at designing our amenities, we made sure that we accounted for these properties and these homes to be included in that amenity. So there are no plans to expand our amenities. It was designed to handle these homes. And this is just a little bit about the amenity that's there, just to give you a feel for it. There's a fitness center, a craft room, a ballroom, and a lounge that gets used daily by a lot of folks that just come down there and meet. Those are really inside. They've got the kitchen, of course, as well. Go ahead. And outdoors, pickleball courts, bocce ball courts, fire pit, tiki bar, outdoor pool. There is an indoor pool we added in this as well. And some private areas outside where you can have small parties and things like that. So really quite a variety of things just to make it a beautiful place to hang out with a lot of activities to do. And here are just some photos of the inside of the, what we call a Prairie Club at Bellwether that you can flip through here. And I hope that gives you a taste of what a Del Webb neighborhood is. As I said, across the country, these are typically much larger, so the amenity packages might be much larger buildings or multiple buildings across the neighborhood. Sometimes there's golf clubs, but this is designed to be for about a 500 home neighborhood. So the amenities we chose fit right in the graphs and charts of what Del Webb himself would want, with one exception. Over the years, we've always had tennis courts. Tennis courts have gone downhill a bit over the decades, and I hate to say that because I play tennis once a week. But those have been replaced by pickleball courts, so you'll see we've got 6 pickleball courts here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
You said that the average development was 300 homes?
No, that's the smallest.
Oh, the smallest.
Yes.
Okay. That was just like contradictions going all over the place. I couldn't understand.
I could only guess.
yeah, I mean-
Nationwide, it's probably 2, 3, 4,000 homes. I'm guessing.
Really?
Nationwide.
Okay, all right. And the golf courses, I would assume, are probably more towards year-round climates, things like that.
Yeah, mostly.
Yeah, makes sense. Anybody questions, or we might have some?
I have a question. Thank you for that presentation. It was well put together. Ordinarily, I believe, and I'm new to this panel, but ordinarily it's my understanding that this panel is asked to evaluate projects, not the applicants. But since you mentioned the company, I think, would you mind if I ask you a question or two about your company?
Sure, I'll do my best.
So you mentioned that your company started in Arizona. Did I understand that correctly?
The company that Pulte Group bought was named Del Webb, and Del Webb started in Arizona. That's correct.
Okay. I was in Arizona, small world. I was in Arizona on Friday, and I read an article about a 800-member class action lawsuit against Pulte, and I'm wondering, because they were alleging poor workmanship, and I'm wondering if that case has been resolved yet or not.
I have not even heard of that case.
Okay, thank you.
What I could do is share a lot of information with you about our quality control, and we've been rated very highly in the Twin Cities.
Okay, could I ask you to look into one more thing for me?
Certainly.
I know that there's also been a number of lawsuits filed here in Minnesota. Would you mind providing me with some additional information about those cases.
Lawsuits against Pulte Group?
Involving Pulte, yes.
I don't think there's hardly any, but I'd be happy to provide that.
Yeah, a quick Google search will pull that up. So if you don't mind, again, ordinarily, I think our role is to focus on the project at hand. But since you brought up the company background, I just have these questions. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd greatly
I'd be happy
appreciate
to
it.
do that. Keep in mind that Pulte Group is a large company. We
Sure.
build tens of thousands of homes a year. The percentage of lawsuits we have compared to others, I would bet would be similar or less.
Thank you.
Just for background, Mr. Lamont, I also raised the same issue when they first did this. I had looked up internet stuff, and there seemed to be, some questions around the country. They weren't built here yet, but there were, I noticed the same kind of thing, that there were a lot of things. But what builder doesn't get complaints about some of their quality? Or, some people just have some really high standards. Some are really systemic. I didn't get the impression it was systemic with Pulte, but it was noted earlier in our discussions.
I get that, but I think that our role is to also look out for the best interests of the citizens of the city. And when I read about an 800-member class action lawsuit against an applicant that's before this panel, I just want to learn more.
Okay, no,
So, thank you.
good question. Good question.
Mr.
Sir.
Chair, if I may. I'm gonna go a little different direction, Paul. We are all volunteers on this commission, and we're all residents of the great city, I'm gonna say, of Corcoran. And I mean that sincerely. I've been in the city for 14 years and love this place. I came from Maple Grove and got pushed out into the country because of the development and the rolling houses that started coming my way. My question is, when we get things that are close to Bellwether, the developments, our plans have been in place for a long time as far as what's going along the Highway 101 corridor. And they're asking, wait a minute, we don't want this along that corridor. Why are we putting industrial parks? Why are we doing these things? What is Pulte, Bellwether, what are you guys doing to inform the people that live in your communities that at the intersection of, I'm trying to think, is it Shuddy and 101? That's a commercial property, is that right? Stieg, excuse me, Stieg and 101, that's a commercial property. What do residents know about that in your community? Because it has been planned for a long time, and I'm getting really tired of people telling me we didn't know that. And when we've been talked to in this group and in past planning commissions, Pulte or other developers have said we have maps of what's going on, or general maps related to our comp plans and stuff of what's going around, and we continually get people saying, we don't want that here. The repair shop that is going in on the industrial park across from the KOA, it's all in the plans, it's all this, and everybody's saying, we don't want that there, we don't want this to happen. 101 isn't gonna be that big a road. We all know, I know from 34 years in this general vicinity, that 101 is gonna become a whole different road. 610 is absolutely gonna come across, or some variation is gonna come across to 101. What do your residents know about what's going to happen in the future around their communities? We've got people here that are owning 5, 10 acres and even more around these communities saying, when's it gonna stop? Well, to those people, I'm telling those people tonight too, that this has all been planned for the last 20, 30 years. And we have to update our comp plan every 10 years to the Met Council about our plans and stuff. And the eastern third of Corcoran is gonna be developed between now and 2040 is the eastern third of Corcoran is going to be developed. There's plans, there's all of these things. PUD, all of our, how do I want to say it? All of our acronyms about anything non-standard as far as our ordinances and go and properties and stuff. What is being done to let your residents know what's going on? What's being done to let the residents that are around you? We've got people submitting us emails related to wetland changes, related to roads that they live on, and construction traffic is coming down their roads and they're not being followed as far as being good neighbors from Pulte or other developers. Anybody's going down any gravel road here and it's just beating the roads up and stuff. What is being done to be a better informant or a better planner as far as telling people who's coming into these developments, as far as what's going on around them? They aren't going to be cornfields forever. I'm sorry, they just aren't. I'm not going to stand in the way of those people that own those properties and stuff. And then, again, commercial property right there on the corner of Stieg. I want to say Streeler. Stieg and 101. The whole industrial, I'm going to call it Parkway along 101 for 1,000 feet. Is it that far? West of 101. That's all industrial all the way up to Dayton. The plan is there and people are being surprised, and we're being told that the developers are letting people know that the comp plans are out there, they can ask questions and those kind of things, but it always seems to be a surprise when people come. I'm sorry it took me so long to get that out. Thanks for your patience.
Not a problem. Commissioner, I'll hit them one at a time here. Regarding our buyers, we have a disclosure statement that is intended to list all of the things that could be objections. And sometimes that's as simple as a heavily traveled road nearby, or a farm field that sometimes you might smell fertilizer, things like that.
Right.
This is the appropriate place to have things like properties adjacent to you may develop and they may be a commercial or industrial use. I don't have one with me at the moment, but I'd be happy to take, Dean would be happy to take a note right now to have us send a disclosure statement to you so you can see exactly what we're telling our buyers.
I believe you're doing that. They aren't reading them, they aren't paying attention, they're being ignored. I don't know what the reason is, but I really do believe that we need all of our friends in the development community to really make people understand that it's going to change.
We understand this kind of problem. We
Okay.
require our buyers to sign something saying they have read the disclosure statement before we close with them. So we are doing what we can.
Okay.
What we can check is to make sure that the wording is detailed enough so that, this is always difficult because you want to have it broad enough to cover changes that you folks might make in your zoning or land use guidance, but we want it to be as detailed enough so that we give people a flavor for what could happen. And that's kind of a fine line to walk, but that's what we do.
And again, Mr. Chair, if I'm out of line here, the biggest thing that changes is when people come to us for a conditional use permit or a plan unit development. That's the change from the zoning that happens, and that's a give and take thing between the city, property owners, the developers and stuff that has happened. In my experience, when I was in Maple Grove for 20 years, I was part of the planning commission. I've seen it over the last now 34 years, but there's some people that just aren't reading it, aren't saying it, and I understand they're going to come. There's a lot of people here that are going to be frustrated tonight and are going to speak their piece and such, which I believe in, but our comp plan hasn't changed much. It's just the thing that really riles people up is PUDs continually come to us, conditional use permits continually come to us, and we've all said it would be nice to see some things come without all of these things. This thing that's coming in front of us tonight, it fits what Bellwether's doing, it fits Del Webb, it fits what's been going in around there, and thank you very much for working on the park water tower and a possible well area and stuff. Thanks for working with us. I'd like to get the public to be more informed and not come in here and say, nobody told me, no one's contacted me, nothing has happened. And on our city side, on our websites, Facebook, everything, we're telling people everything that's going on and stuff, but there's still people that just aren't reading things. So little bit of frustration on my part, but thank you very much for what you're doing. I believe you're doing it, just, I don't know how you can do it any different. Thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. One quick question. So as I'm looking at the preliminary site plans, okay? So over here it says Phase 3. There's 37 40-foot lots. Are these supposed to be 44? Is that a typo or?
That's a typo. We have no
Okay.
lots that are 40 foot. We have 44 at the minimum.
Okay, and then, over then on the other one, Phase 2, it also says 17 40-foot lots. That's also,
Yeah,
A
we have
typo.
no 40-foot lots.
okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, it might be that we'll have some for you later.
I understand.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, let's open up the public hearing. Again, for those that would like to make comments, please address the podium, name, address, and keep them, if you could, try to keep them limited to 5 minutes. Yes?
We have cards that will call people.
Are you Lynn? Okay, I was about to call your name.
Yeah.
You ready?
All right.
Good guess.
Landon Charm, 19715 Steep. I'm the nice 10-acre strip of the neighbors.
Hmm.
Biggest nearly 300 books. I appreciate your comments, Dean, because, you know, I'm probably one of those community members that is a bit frustrated with maybe the lack of communication. So, you know, from what I'm seeing on the plan there, are beautiful view of farmland, like we bought the property really like, you know, rural, mountain, bunch of backyards and on the trail. So, I wanna know, you know, what's being done to preserve why we bought our property. Because I, you know, we can be an eyesore, we got chickens, we got a cow, we, you know, have a naked little boy that runs around outside and, you know, can probably, you know, would probably ruffle some feathers with the new neighborhood that's going in, so I'm just curious if there's any plans or things.
Speak on the mic, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there a plan to put in place some sort of privacy so that, you know, maybe you guys are protected from us as an eyesore and we're protected from you guys as an eyesore?
Lynn,
Yeah.
if you're going to address the commission,
Oh,
yeah,
commission.
thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've never done this before.
That's okay.
Maybe.
That's okay. Now, for these, our professional staff is taking some of your comments. And the way we have done this in the past then is once we get through the public hearing, then we'll, if they can, to the extent that they have the information to address those concerns or those questions, we'll try to answer them here on the spot tonight. For anything that can't, there will be a follow-up with you, or we might give you some alternatives for some other folks to address those concerns with. But know that we're hearing it, it's being recorded, and to the extent we can.
I don't expect anybody to have any.
Well, you know, Lynn, I also, am like you, lived out here, 25 years, overlooked beautiful countryside. And while I'm on the other side of the Musa right now, I'm just on the other side. But in conversations that we have with other folks, there's this desire and outspoken support for the city to keep its rural, character. Okay.
Microphone, I'm so sorry.
Sorry. We knew it would be
Yeah.
developed, just if there would be some privacy, some sort of trees or something that would be a buffer between. But
Okay.
we knew it would eventually be developed.
Okay.
And
Okay.
will the speed limit be the same, Matt Ducharme?
That's not part of that's not part of our packet, and since it's a public safety issue, there's no way I could answer that for you. I would hope, you know, if it's too fast, maybe it should be slowed down, but, as that road improves, you're talking about Stieg Road, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that would have to be a question for, Mr. Mattson. So, okay, anything else? All right, thank you. Next?
Next, we have Sarah Prestang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question was answered in the presentation because the maps were much.
Name and address,
Sorry,
please.
Sarah Presting, 21955 Oakdale Drive. We've had the property for a year. We're building on it right now, so I'm not living there, but we own it. My question, I think, was answered with the better maps that I could see. But on page 56 out of the 284 pages of the meeting minutes, it seemed to show that on those small broken down maps, that part of this was going to be north of 30 and west of Kane, and that didn't fit with anything else that was talked about or shown in other maps. So I'm wondering if that was a mistake, and I'm guessing it is, because it doesn't relate at all in location to what was shown tonight or talked about. So I think my question was answered, that was a mistake. Maybe it was on one of the preliminary site plans, their little location map in the top right corner.
I don't have page numbers right in
They
front
weren't
of me.
page numbered, it was just my computer said I
I'll
was
be
on.
happy to follow up with
Okay,
you tomorrow.
sounds good. I think it probably was an error, but that was, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Probably an error. Oh, and then next we have Ron Zappa.
Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners, I just wanted to add,
Name and
Ron
address.
Zappa,
Yeah.
7482 Fur Lane in Corcoran, Minnesota. I wasn't planning on talking concerning this issue. However, I think I'm in a unique position that I happen to be an owner in Mesquite, Nevada, in the Sun City, Del Webb community there. We purchased a home there approximately 11 years ago. We have now approximately 2,000 homes in the area. And at the time of sale, in my estimation, the salespeople in Pulte were very upfront in disclosing information. Like I have the world's long drive park right behind my house, essentially. All of that was disclosed. And I think for the most part, as far as a builder goes, they are probably one of the better, more respected communities here. So I just wanted to verify basically everything that they've said. I, as a member of Corcoran here, really take that to heart. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's good to hear. Good to hear.
And then anyone joining us from home, if you'd like to participate in the public hearing, please raise your hand. If you're calling by phone, that would be *9. Or if you're on your computer, you should be able to access the raise your hand function via the reactions menu on the bottom of your screen, and possibly through your participants tab if you're on a mobile device. And Mr. Chair, currently no one is raising their hand on Zoom.
Okay. Is there anybody else in our audience tonight? Yes. Please do.
Can you use
Grab the
microphone,
microphone. It's not picking you up.
I'm Kay Wiesman, and I live at 10545 Robert Lane. And that Robert Lane goes right into Steve. The other day, a neighbor said to me that they never sorry.
Thank you.
It was a quiet road, but because of speed, Robert Lane has taken a lot of that traffic for Pulte Homes too. And I don't mind that you're putting Pulte Homes in. I understand development too, and nobody's gonna tell a property owner they shouldn't develop their property. That's why people buy property. However, I believe that the honorable commissioners here should really take a hard look at the people that are already here too. Because your job, I would think, would be charged with not just, is this development a good development, a bad development, you know, all the little plus and minuses in the checkbox, but it should be, how does this impact everybody else who already has a stake in the game? And I'm one of those people that has a stake in the game. And I've watched belly dumps, I've watched major I can't even describe them. I always call my husband and say, I saw this vehicle going down Robert Lane. What is it? Because it's this huge monstrosity, and we're just a little road. And when I mow my lawn, I mentioned this at the very first meeting that Pulte Homes, when they first made the Del Webb proposal, was that I'm in fear for my life to mow my lawn on my rider because those vehicles come ripping down Stieg and ripping down Robert Lane, and it's a problem. The only beef I have with Pulte Homes is, well, I have two. One is that when at the first meeting they said they were going, and they showed the beautiful pictures, and that's all well and good. We had something, and I don't understand the city stuff, so you guys will have to help me here. But there was something about multiple fronts on the building so that they have a certain look, and they got a variance from that because they said people would want to decorate their homes anyways, so they would look lovely. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, this is not maybe the rest of the group, the current development looks like a compound. And there's not that variety. The houses are strategically put in certain places, and I don't think it's an asset to Corcoran to have a development that looks like a compound, like post-World War II housing. But maybe that's just my opinion. But when I want to back up, I got off on a tangent. But when I was talking about traffic and on the road and Stieg Road, what really bothered me is sometimes I drive through Pulte Homes because I want to see it. I want to see what it looks like. Because your residents, I will say this, the residents of Pulte Homes are bar none the nicest people on the planet. They're always friendly, and you know, they see me and think I'm one of the residents because I'm old. But when I drove through, I saw signs that said they were routing all the traffic onto Stieg. If they were there to do construction work, don't come in with their residents. Come over on Stieg where the people of Corcoran have to tolerate it, the people that are already there. And that kind of irks me. They have signs right in the front, like if you're a contractor, go over the Stieg side. And I don't think that's why are their roads pristine and our roads torn up? The people that have already paid taxes and lived here. There's so many little things like that, and I don't want to be anti-Pulte Homes because I'm sure that for the nice people that live there, they're providing a service. So I don't want to say it that way, but something, and I believe a planning commission is charged with looking at traffic flow, looking at impact in neighborhoods when you approve these developments, because Stieg is a nightmare at times of day, and people fly down the road, they speed. If I would have seen what Stieg was going to look like when I bought my property, I probably would have not invested in Corcoran, and I love Corcoran. This has been my home for decades. So I just think that needs to be considered, like the other nice residents said, the people with the cow, which, you know, you should charge admission because they come down to see that cow. I don't know that, you know, and I would like Pulte Homes to tell me where are these fabulous trails, because at the first meeting they said all of Corcoran could use the trails and could participate with Del Webb because it would be part of Corcoran. I haven't seen any nature trails, and I go in there all the time, and I've only seen one big open area. I've seen the clubhouse for the people who live there, but I've seen one grassland open area where people throw balls for their dogs. If the parks are in there, I missed them, and I really would like to see those.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anyone online raising their hand, Chair.
Okay. All right, anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, at this point, I suggest that we close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Kim.
I'll second Lanterman.
All right, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Opposed? All right, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. All right, we will move on to commission discussion and questions and recommendations. So now, of course, as you all know, over the course of our Zoom meetings, we went one by one and commanded the floor, and then we would go around a second time for follow-up. So would anybody like to start off?
I'll start.
Okay, Mr. Lannerman, you have the floor.
I have issues with the PUD standards just generally and conceptually where flexibility is granted, and let's face it, flexibility is really just another name for skirting the city code. Where flexibility is granted in exchange for certain benefits for the city, and here those benefits aren't really benefits for the city at all. The staff report says that, and I'm quoting here, the development is not in, let me get to the relevant part. In exchange for this flexibility, the developer will provide both internal infrastructure needed to support their development, land for the city well and water tower sites, parkland, off-site improvements to, and how do you pronounce the name of the road? Stieg, thank you, I should know that. Off-site improvements on Stieg Road, turn lane improvements on County Road 116, and trunk infrastructure improvements that will serve a larger development area. Okay.
Mr. Lanterman, may I just interrupt you just for a second? What part of the report were you reading from?
Page 4, paragraph 3. Sorry. Most of these benefits are not really for the city, but for the builder's customers. In other words, these benefits, as articulated, are really things that the applicant should be doing anyway. The only benefit to the city is the parkland dedication, and here I understand that even those minimums cannot be met, so there is the additional cash payment, which is nearly $250,000. So just for my benefit, because I'm new here, what's being done? What's going to be done with that money? And I suppose I'm just trying to figure out whether the city is better served by enforcing the minimums, or if the cash payment can actually be put to good use. My second issue is, and I'm sorry I don't have the page site, but from the staff report, section 1060.060, subdivision 5 of the zoning ordinance requires that the driveway be at least 22 feet in length between the front of the garage and the street, roadway, or sidewalk, and, quote, not impede pedestrian or traffic circulation or access to any other dwelling unit, nor shall it adversely affect the ability to provide public utilities or public safety. Now, it's not clear from the plans provided by the applicant if the driveways comply with this requirement. I see that this has been covered in the proposed resolution, but is there any additional detail that has been provided on this since the staff report? Thank you.
Kendra? Natalie, any?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the PUD, the city has a lot of discretion on. And in the past, we have said that regional infrastructure that does not simply serve this development is a PUD benefit. The commission could have a different opinion. and this council could have a different opinion. But that is your role to review those and see if you do believe that we're getting PUD benefits. No developer is required to provide a water tower or a well for their site, but they do have to provide some infrastructure improvements. In terms of park dedication, I think that's a great question. We only want to take the land we want. We don't want to take 20 acres of land if we don't have a plan for a 20-acre park. So we have the flexibility under the statutes to take the land we want, and when we don't, take the cash, which allows us to acquire trails and parks in locations where a developer might own a piece of land and be required only to dedicate 5 acres of parkland. I'm making this up. And we might say, you know what, we really want 10, and so we're gonna buy 5 acres using that cash from that park dedication pool. We also use those funds to, as I mentioned, when the developer comes in, they have to do the base for the trail, but we reimburse them for paving, and so some of that fund is used for that. It's not used to do park improvements. That comes from a different source. You can't use those park dedication funds for that. It's really for acquisition of park land. So it is important for the city to take not only the land where we want it as identified on the comprehensive plan, but to also take cash. And then the third question or comment about the driveway length, we have not received anything since the packet went out, and we would expect to see that detail with the final PUD plan if it proceeds forward regarding the driveway length.
Could I ask a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
Kendra? I think I heard earlier that there's also a second site being considered for the water tower, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this land may not even be, or this water tower may not even be part of the benefit to the city from this project, correct?
The actual water tower will not. I think Public Works would say, though, having the land as an option is valuable.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Meredith, would you like to take the floor, please?
Kendra, I had a concern about the 15 to, I'm looking at the park shape, the area, and looking at a 15 to 20 stall parking lot with the required drive aisles and that one would need, and I was wondering how it's going to fit there. And that's probably because I do plan parking lots occasionally, and they always take up more than you think. And so I'm wondering, I'm looking at that and wondering how it's going to fit, and also for the residents that live around there, how will they feel about having a parking lot around them? I know that we require plantings and buffer plantings, but still you have a parking lot next to you. And do future residents know that they could potentially have a water tower in their midst? It's a tall item. I might have a feeling about a water tower that another resident may have a different feeling about, so is that disclosed to them? Another question I had was about the variance being sought for the properties that are backing up to Steig Road. And I'm looking at the landscape plan, and I don't recall the amount of landscaping that was done in the previous phases where that variance was granted. But wondering if on the landscape plan that amount of planting is equal to what previously earned the approval of the variance. Again, I don't remember it, but I'm looking at it and saying, are we getting, they're asking for something that was provided previously, are we getting the same in return there in terms of increased, and now I can't find the sheet, but it's in here somewhere, and I might have missed it. But I was looking at it, and I think you probably know which landscape plan it's on. It was color-coded and shape-coded. That was my questions. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, Meredith, Commissioner Wu is absolutely right. I think it's important that they lay out that parking lot in the park and we use that to determine whether we have enough land for the park. That was the discussion at the Parks and Trails Commission, is we do need a parking lot here, and we want to make sure that it fits in there. And, you know, I have a park near my house where the parking lot does kind of tuck behind the homes, and people need to be aware of that and make a decision about whether that's where they want to live. So we want to see that and bring that back to the Parks Commission before we determine that it is enough land for that park, that it's well located. Again, we want to make sure there's a way to fit it in there and still fit the water tower, the well, which we want that to move, and the facilities that are part of a park, which in this neighborhood might be a little bit different than what's in Ravinia, for example, where we have a lot of families, but we still want recreational facilities in this park. So that's really important, and needs to be further fleshed out with the Parks and Trails Commission. I certainly think that better graphics, if this were to go forward to disclose to residents the water tower site, I think by the time we get to the final PUD plan, we'll know, I think, probably whether this is in fact the well and water tower site, or it's still an option. But that certainly needs to be better shown on here. I agree, Mr. Chair, it's hard to see on the plan. And then the architectural standards, really important. The number of trees back there is similar. It's 5 to 6 trees in the backyard of each lot. That is what exists for the bellwether lots that granted the flexibility through the PUD previously, plus that increased setback of 5 feet. So they're shifted, the houses are shifted back from the road further than the minimum would be. But again, if you've been out there, you can take a look at that and decide if that's warranted. And it's not just a blank, I want to be clear, it's not a blank wall. They still have wider trim and some other upgrades, but you have to balance whether it's enough. And I think,
I have one follow-up question, if I could. Shadow studies done on a water, we're talking about a tall water tower that has the, does the city typically do shadow studies with those?
you know, great question. We've discussed it at the staff level. I think it's important. I've worked on other projects in other cities that do have water towers, and I think it's really important to look at where the shadow is going to fall. We have not actually done a shadow study, but certainly something that we could take a look at. I think where it is located in the park and the layout is probably reasonably well located, but I think that's something you could certainly add as a recommendation.
I do have one more question. You know, I've heard before, if that's okay.
No, yeah, please.
You know, residents complain about subcontractor behavior frequently. Cars, trucks clearly associated with construction activities, roaring down their streets. And I'm wondering, what is the complaint? And this is probably not the forum. I should possibly contact the city administrator about it. But I think that since they are there,
Move your microphone just a little bit closer to you.
Thank you.
so I think that, is there a way that such subcontractors can be spoken to, some complaint process be put in place? This is more of a statement than a question. I haven't made that complaint myself because there hasn't been activity on Cane Road, but we hear it. So I'm wondering what is the process? Maybe that can be followed up with the residents who are witnessing that.
You know, that's great. We didn't really respond to some of the questions from the public hearing, but this kind of ties into that, which is, as part of a development proposal, the city engineer determines what streets should be used for construction traffic. And we do want construction traffic coming on higher volume roads. So we have local streets, we have collector streets, connector streets, and arterials, and they have different anticipated traffic volumes. And Stieg is a collector road, and it is anticipated to carry higher volumes of traffic than 105th in Bellwether, for example. So the city engineer does, as part of the review, say which streets construction traffic should come through. We want them coming on 101 and Stieg, not on local Robert Lane, for example, should not be getting construction traffic. And so if you're seeing construction traffic unrelated to your neighbor's construction project, which there's been a lot of that lately, you should contact the city, and we can certainly reach out to, if we can identify the truck, if it's a Pulte contractor, there are tools that they can do. We've dealt with that in other projects in Ravinia. If you've been there, they have signage and fining for subcontractors, and certainly that's something we could look at. But we need to know if there's something happening. But it is something we look at and tell them where to go. We don't want contractor traffic cutting through any neighborhood, whether it's Bellwether or Robert Lane. So we want them on those collector and arterial roads. But if there is a complaint about construction traffic or speed, you should contact the city. The police are the people that can contact about speed. There are standards for speed volumes on roads, and I don't anticipate the traffic or the speed limit on Stieg is likely to change with the improvements planned for Stieg. But what I would say is the improvements do include turn lanes into Robert Lane, for example, into this development. There are improvements that will happen with that, which may make the traffic more manageable. But if people are speeding, we have a police department.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of speed signs in Corcoran. I don't think we do. And I think when we get new people coming in, driving these trucks, they forget. And I don't think our residents should feel like they're going to be sideswiped down in the front
No.
yard. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. I apologize. Did you want to address any of the questions that we had during the first part?
Yeah, I think that was the two questions. I think that there was some statements, but I think there was a question about the speed limit, and there was a question about construction traffic, more of a statement, and speeding, and I think that wrapped it up. So again, if there are problems with those, contact us at City Hall.
Okay. Great, thank you. Commissioner Behrenkamp, did you have any comments or questions that you wanted to address?
I go back to everything that I've been through and where I was and such, and I had truly understand all of the current residents and such and what you're going through. I had the option to move away from the development before it got me, but I really do believe Pulte is doing what they can to be a good neighbor, and I'm sorry using that term, but I think it can be better. You've got some folks out here that have a lifestyle that has been a certain way for a long time. We've heard it from the first speaker that she knew something was coming, but it would still be nice to not have the construction traffic enter from 116 down Stieg Road. It'd be nice if it could come in on 101, get to the areas it's supposed to, and those kind of things. And then again, my other concern, I spoke it very clearly, of the current residents of this area understanding and knowing that the people that own the acreage around them, it isn't going to be that way for very long. Developers come and offer significant amounts of money to do developments and those kind of things, and that cow or that naked kid is going to be gone at some point. And I make light of it a little bit, but I think everybody in here understands that this is changing, and it's changed, and the eastern third of Corcoran is changing. So it's crazy. We can't stop it. And to the current landowner of this property, congrats. I know this is a long process and such, but we all have rights to do what we can with our property, and we have no right to tell other people what they can do or can't do with their property, other than our ordinances and those kind of things. Like I said, there's frustration up here about PUDs and conditional use permits and such. So it's a long drawn out thing, but I think in the end, I think things will come out okay, but not everybody's going to be happy. So nothing more than that. I think we were talking, Mark, I think you made the comments as far as everything non-ordinance and a PUD is just a way to ask for forgiveness or get around things and such. I'm one of the give and take and such. I'm one that I appreciate the water tower. I appreciate the new well, those kind of things. I'm still fighting with, what do we need a park in here for when this is all a 55 and older community and they've got a clubhouse or whatever. I'm trying to figure that out. And in my mind, I would rather see larger lots, those kind of things, but I do understand what they're doing, and it's 55 and older, and they're getting away from having to do their own maintenance, those kind of things. I understand all of those things. I just, if we're gonna put a lot in and such, the trails that we see in our maps looks like other neighbors will be able to go that way. If I live 10 acres next to it, this is the last place I wanna go. I'll stay on my 10 acres. So just speaking frankly and from the heart on my side. So I just, while I understand it, it completes the bellwether location and does all of these things. I've mixed emotions about how close and how non-open this is, and I understand the reason it's all happening, but my last statement, it would be nice if Pulte could become that perfect neighbor during this development, and that's helping existing neighbors still have what they have instead of having to deal with chaos. So, thank you very much for the time.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
could I just add a quick comment to Commissioner Varenkamp's comments?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, I get that. You know, I'm not anti-development, but we have a code.
Right.
We have rules. Without rules, you have chaos. Without rules, you have developers coming in and doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
So I am all for property rights. You own the property, you build whatever you want, whether you want kids there or not. But you gotta follow the rules.
Yeah.
And it just seems as though whenever a rule is inconvenient, we skirt the rule and we say, oh, don't worry about that rule. Okay, and I think that we have set a bad precedent. And just because we've made mistakes in the past doesn't mean we should continue to make them moving forward. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you.
Mark, I think we could go on for a long time about this point. I don't think the PUD process is or should be about skirting the rules. It is about allowing for greater design flexibility, where the traditional zoning ordinance doesn't permit higher uses of the land. I'm probably not quoting that very well. I probably messed that up. But you're right, it's a tool, it's how we use it. I've seen it used well and I've seen it used poorly, and I think that we're somewhere in between there. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's depends on what comes before us, kind of improvements we need, and again, I think we've done it well, but I think also that we've done it not well. So there's definitely improvements to be made, but I do not agree with you in thinking that it is a way in which developers get what they want. Because having worked for clients in a different setting, I see that they're constantly trying to meet the needs of the city, and I think that they do come to the city with that intent. Could we do a better job? We could. We could.
We can agree to disagree.
Great comment.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great comments.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to add to that? I don't think there was a question there for you, so, okay.
No, it was for Mark, actually.
Okay. Commissioner Scholak, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, sir. I don't know if this was covered. If I missed it, I apologize. But is there tree removal involved in this project, and how much?
There-
I thought I saw,
There is a tree removal plan. There is tree removal, again, we do not have a tree preservation ordinance. I think it's towards the back of the plan. Well, it's the TS sheets, I don't know.
TS4 and TS5.
So the tree removal is 41.6% of the caliper inches. So of the 4,700 caliper inches, 1,900 are removed.
1,900,
Removed. So
Tree.
60% tree preservation.
60% keep and 41%
Yeah.
cut down.
Yes, 41.06 removed. So 58.4 preserved. Six- 46.
Thank you.
They add up to 100%, give or take a point. All right.
I was no good at math either.
I will continue to ask this at every meeting. I don't know why we can't tell developers to develop where there aren't trees. Just coming into the meeting tonight, driving up County Road 10 to the City Hall here, I see another clear cutting going on. The trucks are working late at night to cut the trees down. I hear it from a half mile away. And it sickens me to, I know that the developers are willing to plant new trees, and that usually means about a story high, something like that, a story and a half. You're not planting 20 and 30-foot trees. And these are environments where wildlife lives and breeds. These are trees that you are never going to get back again. And unfortunately, a lot of the new trees that you're planting are also decorative trees, or trees that are fancier looking or something, rather than the whatever trees are out there right now. That my concern is and always will be, about preserving as much of the environmental integrity and looks of this city. Regarding construction trucks, as my alter ego, I'm a police reserve. Is that for me?
What are you doing about it? Anything? I'm sorry, I'll be quiet.
All right. I'm a police reserve officer in this city, and I've been called out many times or assigned to streets or roads that have high truck traffic, construction traffic. One, of course, is Hackamore Road. County Road 10 that I live on is constant all day. Regardless of whether the road can handle it or not, I think it's fair that the residents on Stieg Road ask construction trucks not to go on their road. That's just, if nothing else, it's a courtesy, I think. And the third point I wanted to make was the well and septic system. We got a letter here from Kay. And I don't know if we have sufficiently answered the question, what environmental impact will this have? And we also got another letter about, from the Whiteheads, Mike and Lisa, about the amount of water that has seemed to relocate, is my understanding. So I'm wondering if you could respond, Kendra, to the well and septic and the environmental impact studies.
Yes, the state of Minnesota establishes environmental regulations and identifies thresholds whereby development is required to prepare either an environmental assessment worksheet, EAW, or an environmental impact statement, an EIS. This did not trigger that. We talked about this with the council at the comprehensive plan. This does not trigger it either under a connected action, which is a complicated way of saying it's a continuation of bellwether, or as a new project. However, we did tell the council we would do an EAW analysis of the new project using the bellwether EAW as the standard. And so we reviewed with the DNR and the State Historical Society, SHPO, this project and prepared a memo for the file. I'm happy that's available public if somebody would like to see that memo that our engineer and our planning team put together. But at the end of the day, we've evaluated against those state regulations, and there's nothing that crosses the threshold on an environmental review that cannot be mitigated with things like wetland buffers. The Blandings turtle and the shrike are two animals that could be here, and there's procedures under state law about how to identify those, and we put signs up in the construction site and things like that. So we did do that portion of it. In terms of the construction traffic, I mean, traffic drives on roads, and they are public streets, and we do, as I said, want to limit them to the higher volume roads. Certainly that's something we can bring back and talk with engineering and the development team about which direction they're going. You know, where are the materials and things like that, and speed limits are another topic we can certainly talk about. So again, happy to make that environmental review available. It was completed as part of that concept plan review. The second letter, I do think had some concerns, and I think it talked about something that happened 8 years ago and some drainage issues. The short answer is that existing drainage must be maintained, and that this site does drain west, and it will continue to drain west. But if there is a clog in a ditch or a culvert, we do want to know that, and so I would encourage the Whiteheads to Whiteheads to reach out to our Public Works Director, and as this proceeds, they can certainly take a look at that site. But in general, when development happens, those kinds of drainage issues tend to get better because we're holding water on this new site as opposed to draining it there. But I did review it with the city engineer yesterday. He's aware of the issue, and certainly if this project goes forward, there will certainly be some on-site inspections. But regardless of whether it goes forward, if there is a clog here or over at 116 where it ultimately drains to, feel free to reach out, and he'll work with them and visit the site.
Thank you. And just one other comment about the construction trucks. I realize that you, as a developer, as a corporation, really don't have control over every individual driver, and I understand that. The vast majority of the offenders of the speed limits and things like that, I believe are probably not from Corcoran, I'm guessing. They're subcontracted from other areas, and they either don't know or choose to break the speed limits on our roads. It's just very frustrating when you're sitting there, and I was many times, sometimes 4 to 8 hours a week, I was monitoring the traffic on Hackamore Road, which is not in the best of shape anyhow. And I would see these trucks with tremendous loads, dangerous loads, deadly loads, driving down our streets. And after a while, I think you don't have to be a trained observer to be able to tell whether a truck or a car or vehicle is speeding or not. And they obviously are, and it turns that vehicle into a death machine. And so I think maybe a good place to go with this is to talk to all the developers who are doing work in Corcoran, and ask them to talk to all the subcontractors that do work for them, and say that we're asking you to maintain the speed limit, or even in a perfect world, even a little bit under the speed limit to protect our citizens. Thank you, sir.
Okay, guess that leaves me to wrap up. So just a couple of general questions, and then I'd like to get into some discussions on some issues with the rest of you folks. Am I correct in assuming that the builder for Amberley is Pulte?
Correct.
Okay. And when it comes to that park, I think that was a question I hadn't thought of. So this park down here is clearly within the bellwether. That is a public park, correct?
Mr. Chair, it is a public park.
Okay.
And
So if I'm a senior living in that development down on those new parts, is it maybe, I mean, could I'm wondering if I would consider that to be a positive amenity, to have a play field and whatever else, and the traffic running through my development that is supposed to be for seniors only. So I'm questioning the logic of actually, it's kind of like you have an outdoor pool but not an indoor pool kind of thing. This is kind of like the same thing. Is there any rhyme or reason that maybe you guys could give us as to why that park is there?
I
or-
can tell you.
Sure, okay.
It's on our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
We wanted this natural park here to preserve, as Commissioner Schulach talks about, a significant woodland area. So as part of Bellwether, we took the big nature park, and we'll take more when the final phase comes on the west side. And then our comprehensive plan also shows a neighborhood park here. And so the city is telling them they are required to dedicate that land. And so it is really important that we have the parking lot, and that parking lot is visible and accessible. And that's why we made them widen out that entrance, and they may have to do more, but, and making those trails connect from Stieg Road through Amberley, through Bellwether, to make it clear that this is a public park.
Okay.
But we, as the city, are requiring it. I don't know if they would say they would like it or not.
And I can see that, and I guess maybe I didn't quite put my question. And I know that the amenities haven't been finalized, but would it not be better to leave it just natural with just trails instead of putting in, ball fields and everything else that maybe don't fit the residents of the neighborhood?
Right. I think the Parks Commission's had a little bit of conversation about this. As I say, it's going to look different than Wildflower Park in Ravinia, which is a playground and a sport court, and I forget what else is out there. I think this will probably still have some sort of a playground. A lot of these folks are gonna have grandkids that are gonna come, and they're gonna wanna walk there and do that. But it's more likely to be more of a, less of a playground with baseball fields, and maybe more, those exercise parks and things like that. But I think there'll probably still be a playground. There'll still be things that residents want to walk from Robert Lane someday and use. I think people will want to use that open space park. That's going to be a gorgeous park to see the trees that we are trying to preserve. That's one way we do it, is by preserving this park. So I think you're right that what goes in that park will be different. And I think the Parks Commission really wants to make sure we have good signage. We do a lot to make sure everybody realizes it's not the Bellwether Park, it's the city park.
Okay. And then with the parking lot, certainly understand the need for that, but there were some questions in about backing up against houses. So would our parking lot standards apply there? The 3-foot barrier and landscape, to that extent?
I think we'll work very closely with Pulte on that. I mean, they're not gonna want a parking lot shining in the rear yards of homes that they won't be able to sell. So I suspect there'll be some pretty significant landscaping along that parking lot. Maybe beyond even the 3-foot that we would typically see. I don't have the answer to that. The Parks Commission wants to see what they can sketch up and work with them to define something that works for the Parks Commission. And the developer.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just real quick, I was asking why are we putting it there? Now I understand with the conversation you guys have just had, the road is gonna go into a non-55 and older community. This is on the northern edge of that property, if and when that ever develops and stuff. And it's a strategic place for a park, even though it is probably on the southwest side of a 55 and a more experienced community. Instead of saying older, I'm gonna do it that way. So it makes a lot more sense. It's neat. It's gonna be a transition park, is kind of, in the time that I've spent on parks and stuff, now I see what it's for, and I apologize for saying, why are we putting it there? So, thanks for letting me speak, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. All right, so on page 9, when we're talking about trees, so the last sentence or last paragraph above the diagram, landscape plan shows an upgraded landscape plan along Stieg Road, 4 to 5 trees in the rear yard. I know it was talked about earlier here. I'm trying to, is that 4 or 5 trees per yard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I thought 4 or 5 trees along that length of a road is not gonna do much, so. But, you know, comparing that to our other one later where they're doing 3 trees per yard, it seemed to be, okay, that seems to be almost a stretch. How are we fitting 4 or 5 trees per yard in this situation? But I understand there's an additional 5 feet, right, in the back. So these won't be in a linear row.
No,
It might actually be 2 rows then, right? Would that be correct?
the plan is the plan.
Yeah, so,
It's a little bit staggered, but it's not
Yeah.
really 2 rows per se.
Yep. okay. All right. Okay, so I think, here's some of my bigger issues. The way I see it, there are, the first question I have is the Bellwether PUD. They are requesting 5 feet in between, the houses. Whereas we have defaulted now, to a 7.5 foot. My question to the commission is, now, we have a lot of precedents here with the original Bellwether development where we allowed this to happen. Is there any appetite within the commission to suggest to the city council that we require the now current default of 7.5 feet side setbacks?
Isn't this only the single-family homes in question? Doesn't this apply, isn't this variance applying to just the single family and not, I thought they were just seeking the same for the Bellwether, but they're looking for the 7.5 between the larger homes. Am I that backwards?
Well, the RMF 3 is, according to the grid,
It's 5 and 10, right?
well, it says 7.5.
Right, they
But
want you to go to
but
7.
they're asking for 5 setbacks.
So, just to be clear, Amberley is the single-family stuff on the west side. And instead of doing 5 and 10, which equals 15, they want to do the easy math, because math is
7.5,
hard. They want to do 7.5 and 7.5 to get to 15. On Bellwether portion, they do want 5 and 5, like they have in the rest of Bellwether.
And my question to the commission is specifically just for the Bellwether portion of this. Do we want to support that, as we did with the original portions, or is there any appetite to maybe recommend to the council to default to the 7.5 feet?
Well, I think we should follow what the code says. So what does the code require? Does it require 5, or does it require 7.5, or does it require 10? I don't know. I don't have that in
You talk
front.
about the underlying zoning?
Yeah.
The underlying
if-
zoning requires 5 feet on the garage side and 10 feet on the living side for a total of 15 feet of separation between both in
Okay.
the RSF 3 zoning district, which is what we used for Bellwether, because if you recall, that had multiple zoning districts.
So, I'm sorry, what is that again? Okay. Yep.
I
Right,
have
so
not talked to a Bellwether resident to ask
So it's
if they
10
are
and
finding the
5, right?
5 feet
Is what the
constricted.
code says, and they wanted
Have you-
7.5.
Did
No,
you-
there was someone who wrote a letter, right?
Not on,
That's
Yeah.
that's a Corcoran resident, isn't it? That's another resident making an observation.
Yeah, they said that it was difficult,
To do yard work and to.
I think that's in a different project.
different.
but
Oh, that was a
I think
different
that's
project,
in the
yeah.
Cook Lake
Might
one.
be.
I was gonna say, I don't think it's.
but like if they're gonna build a deck or something, get materials, contractors, and
Right.
equipment, and it just wasn't there, because you gotta remember, you've got 5 feet on each side of the property line, but you've also got your air conditioners taking up, and it's a lot.
But in the past though, and maybe not this one, we've asked for HVAC units to not be in the side yard. And it's to make that side yard clear. So I'm throwing this in as, if we do stay with the 5 feet, just say we do, can we say, but it really has to be 5 feet, not 3 feet between HVAC units? You know what I mean? This is adding another variable in there, if we stick with the 5 feet.
I was out driving around today, I saw all the HVACs on
We
Between-
do allow
between
them
the
in the
houses.
side and rear yard,
Mm.
in all of our developments with 5-foot setbacks, because all of our developments have 5-foot setbacks. Our new developments, I mean. So we do, as it's drafted, allow them in the side and rear, which is what we allowed for Bellwether to date. You could modify that. I remember with MI on the Bass Lake crossings, that became problematic. I can't remember why, but they had a real concern about that, but that could be something you could talk about.
Well, I remember with MI, there was some drainage easements, but that's not applicable here. My question is if we did keep with the 5 feet, is it reasonable to ask that HVAC units or anything that narrows that 5-foot gap between, you know, the 10-foot collected 10-foot, anything that narrows that not be placed there, such as placing HVAC units at the back of the building?
Yeah, I think you could modify right now, that's in in the PUD resolution as condition number 9 that says it must be located in the side or the rear yard. You could recommend to the council that it be in the rear yard and modify
Yeah,
that condition.
but for like a walkout property and stuff, I mean, might that, and I'm not a builder, but might that not cause some problems for where the utility room would be located on the inside of the house?
I think that probably, now that you're saying, that might have been what MI was concerned
I'm
about, is
thinking it's
their house
burdensome to
plan.
the builder
Yeah.
Yeah.
because of the routing of the HVAC inside the dwelling unit, plus where where the utilities come from the street. It could be an issue, so I'm not sure that it's a reasonable thing to ask. I'm just saying, what if we did?
Yeah.
I know that it is. I don't like the 5 feet. I mean, I know they're doing it, but I haven't talked to a Bellwether resident to ask.
Well, I mean, you know, while I would certainly like to always see developers abide by the standards, again, because we are dealing with a PUD, everything is in play. And because we already have precedence, I'm willing to let this stay at 7.5 feet. So if nobody else wants to bring it up, but let's maybe, this will help play into the next.
That was something that when this concept plan went to the council, one of the things they asked the council is, you know, will you continue to support the Bellwether concept with the 5-foot setbacks if we agree that we will provide that 15-foot separation on Amberley? And that was compelling for them at the time, just for context. but you can make your own recommendation tonight.
Okay. So my second issue, or point of discussion I wanted to have with you folks is Amberley.